ago, it was Denver, Colorado at better than a mile of altitude. This week, it's the West Coast, just outside Seattle. We're racing at sea level. Just outside of Seattle, Washington, literally in the shadow of Mount Rainier, lies Seattle International Raceway, nestled into the quiet woods of the Pacific Northwest. And once a year, the woods come alive with the sound of thunder, NHRA Federal-Mogul drag racing style. Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Reinhardt. When we come to Seattle annually, one of the guys you'd have to deal with in the Federal-Mogul Funny Car ranks is Pat Austin. After all, he lives just down the road in Tacoma. This is the only race he goes to every year where he gets to sleep in his own bed. Austin qualified number 1, looked to have the strongest car. But a funny thing happened back in round number 1. Pat Austin got tattooed. Literally, it was a broken blower belt that stopped the Pro Max car early on. That wasn't the only big upset in round number 1. The number 2 qualifier, Mike Andriotti, got sent packing by Dan McGlone. McGlone with a 584, and you can see Andriotti with problems slows into the 10-second range. That's not enough upsets for you? How about the number 3 qualifier, Larry Minor and the Minor brothers? They couldn't get down the racetrack either. 12 seconds the elapsed time. And even though Mike Giuliani didn't make much of a run, well, it was better than Minor's, and the top 3 qualifiers at Federal-Mogul Funny Car are all gone. That leaves this a wide-open affair for the rest of the field. Could have a first-time winner here this weekend. Over in the Federal-Mogul Dragster ranks, Rick Santos is here this weekend, but believe it or not, he's not the number 1 qualifier. The number 1 qualifier, he's the guy that's standing by with my partner, Jason Baffrey.
Alan, the number 1 qualifier here in the Federal-Mogul Dragster category, is enjoying that position for the first time in his short rookie career. Brandon Henkelman, who got behind the wheel of his father Rick's A-Fuel Dragster at the beginning of the season, is qualified number 1 with an outstanding 5:39. He's coming off of his first ever NHRA final round win at a divisional event at Woodburn, Oregon. You're obviously comfortable with the car, and this thing is hauling.
Yeah, it is, and as great as our weekend was in Woodburn, and as happy as I was to win that race, it's just great to come here with the big hitters and, you know, reaffirm what we did down there and run 30s and consistently well. And doing that is just testimony to how great my crew is. Dana Hopewell, Ralph Freeman, with my dad tuning the thing. I couldn't be happier.
Now, Rick Santos is here. He's qualified number 2. Also, Dale Carlson, Mark Hinges, a field of heavy hitters. If Brandon Henkelman can win this thing off the pole, he's going to prove he's a force to reckon with in the Federal-Mogul Dragster category.
Jason, that car has always been a force to be reckoned with. Don't forget, when Rick Henkelman was driving, he finished number 2 in the national standings a couple of years back. We're joined this week by Gary Ormsby Jr., former Super Comp racer, has now started making waves in the Federal-Mogul ranks, and son of a former Winston champion in Top Fuel. Welcome.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Quite an interesting field of cars we've got this weekend.
It is definitely an interesting field. There's a lot of cars that have run in the 40s, a lot of cars running in the 50s, and then a lot of cars that didn't break the 5-second bracket.
It has been interesting. Here's the way they qualified. Brandon Henkelman on the top of the list. As Jason told you earlier, Rick Santos just a couple of ticks behind in the Oakwood Homes team. As you can see, just 12 cars making the call up here in Seattle this weekend. In round number 1, there's the way they laddered up. As we get set for our first pair, it'll be Steve Federlin and Brandon Henkelman. A very important run, because the winner of this round gets a bye run into the final, and there's nothing like having a test run on race day. Federlin gets him 562 to a 582. Federlin was better on the starting line. Brandon Henkelman ran into problems, and wow, a stunning second round upset. The number 1 qualifier's out of here. Again, this is just the second round, but because of the short field of cars, there is a bye in the semifinals. Steve Federlin will get the bye, so he's in the final round. We'll be back with more of round 2 Federal-Mogul Dragster action from Seattle right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway and the Prolong Super Lubricants Northwest Nationals presented by Napa Auto Parts. There's a mouthful. And once again, we've got an injected car against the supercharged car. Mark Niver driving the injected nitro burner. Mark Henches, there's Henches' machine, the Airtime Aviation ride, running the supercharger, running on alcohol. Gary, you've driven both types of cars. Do you have a preference?
Well, from a driver's standpoint, I'd say the alcohol car is definitely a lot more of a challenge and a lot more fun to drive. The injected cars, they're just neat. You know, that when you go to stage them, you take your foot off the clutch, and that thing starts popping like a popcorn machine, and just the noise itself gets your adrenaline flowing.
A popcorn machine, I like it. Mark Hentz is the number 4 qualifier. Niver is number 10. Niver's car really is a work of art. He's a machinist by trade, calls the car the Billet Bullet. He made the cylinder heads. He made the injector manifold. He made the transmission cases, the rear end cases. Virtually every part of car, every piece of this car that's aluminum was made by Mark Niver's hands. It's a one-of-a-kind automobile.
Yeah, Mark Niver's definitely a craftsman. That guy can build you anything you want.
And he's one of the guys that's been racing injected cars way before they were popular. Niver has the same problem that Hinkleman had, dropped cylinders. Mark Henches, 550. Nice lap in the heat of the day at 253 miles an hour. Henches goes to the semis. Not much wrong with this run for the blown car, Gary.
No, it looked pretty straight. You know, a 550 in the heat of the day, that's a pretty good run. But as you can see, Mark Niver's definitely dropping cylinders on both sides, and you start dropping cylinders, it's over.
The drop cylinders that we're speaking about, you'll be able to see it from here. The fuel volume they run through these machines is so great that if the cylinder quits firing or starts missing, that's what you see coming out of the headers. It's just raw fuel from cylinders that aren't firing. You're not going to outrun a 550 on 6 cylinders. I don't care how good your injected car is. So we've got 2 blown cars headed into the semis, and we'll have one more matchup of a blown car against an injected car. That is a great shot from between the wing struts of the reigning Federal-Mogul champion, Rick Santos, the Oakwood Homes team. That car, over the course of the last 4 years, has been all but unstoppable.
Well, I tell you, anybody that stops those guys deserves a trophy at the end of the day, because they are definitely on their game.
And there is Steve Faria, who is now driving for the Darien and Meadows team. I think it's almost a nostalgic look to see those guys back in a green paint scheme after the red and white cars they've run the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Jerry Darien's been famous for the green cars, and it's good to see him back with the green car. I'm sure he'd like to have a little bit of sponsorship money, though, and paint it whatever color it could, but he's having a good time with that car.
They've had a lot of success with that car being painted green. While these guys get set, let's check in with Jason at the end of the track.
Mark Henches, just a couple of ticks off your qualifying time of 550. Not a bad run in the heat of the day.
550, we're in 548 qualifying, 552 first round. So we're just trying to be consistent. That's always what we try to do, and let the other opponent make the mistake. What happens to, hopefully, to Rick Santos if we get a race in the next round.
He was runner-up in Gainesville. He's looking for his first win of the season.
I gotta believe, Gary Ormsby, that right now Mark Henches is thinking, come on, Faria, because nobody wants to race Santos.
I tell you what, and this is a good race. You've got probably one of the best injected cars in the country, and definitely by far the best blown car in the country.
Here's a little piece of trivia for you. The Darien and Meadows team used to have a driver by the name of Gary Scelzi. If you follow the Winston Pro Drag Racing Tour, you might be familiar with that guy. The 2-time champ in Top Fuel used to drive that Darien Meadows ride. Very careful in the staging procedure. Here we go. Wow. Santos is just crushing him. 543, 255 miles an hour. Steve Faria runs 553, a great lap, but still a 1/10 of a second behind the blue and white car. That Oakwood Homes team is just unbelievable.
Yeah, boy, I don't know who's going to be able to stop them out here. They're definitely got their act together to run a 543 in the heat of the day like this. That's a pretty stout number.
That's a very stout number. As you watch him go down the racetrack, very little wasted motion in the Oakwood car on the far side, and he daylighted him at the finish line. How different is the track conditions today? We had a lot of clouds and some overcast in qualifying, and today it's nothing but clear blue skies.
Well, the track's probably a little bit hotter, but I wouldn't say that it's too much hotter than it was yesterday in the late afternoon. The sun came out later in the afternoon. In the morning, it was definitely cloudy, but it shouldn't be too much different. It might be a little bit more heat in the track.
That's why the crew chiefs get the big bucks. They've got to make those adjustments. We'll be back with Federal-Mogul Funny Cars after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. Alan Reinhardt, Gary Ormsby Jr. in the booth. Jason Baffery taking care of things out in the field for us today. And we get set for round 2 Federal-Mogul Funny Car. Here's the way they qualify. Pat Austin at the top of the heap. No big surprise in his backyard. Mike Andriotti 2, Larry Minor 3. Of course, as we told you at the top of the show, all 3 of those guys out of here in round number 1. A very tough field of Federal-Mogul Funny Cars. You can see John Evanchuk, the number 16 qualifier. Here's the way they matched up back in round number 1, and you can keep track of what happened to your favorite driver there. The funny cars on the West Coast always put on such a great show. I mean, we had, what, 24 of them here trying to qualify for a 16-car field, just making it a feat in itself.
Boy, it sure is. And these funny cars on this track, the track's a little slippery down at the other end. And saw a lot of guys having a little bit of trouble up down at the other end trying to stay in the groove.
Roger Bateman and Mike Giuliani, the first pair, a couple of Canadian runners. Bateman from Alberta, Giuliani from British Columbia. Of course, Seattle just kind of a hop from the Canadian border. We always have a big influx of Canadian racers and fans when we come down here. One of these Canadians going to the semifinals. We've got the number 11 and number 14 qualifiers matched up here. Round 1 really was a bloodbath. You didn't want to be a higher qualified car there.
No, I think there was only a couple cars that were higher qualified cars got by first round.
Bateman far side, Giuliani in the near lane. Bateman got close to the center line and he had to pedal it. Mike Giuliani wins it at 6:01, 236 miles an hour. Mike Giuliani is headed for the semifinals. It looked like this was Roger Bateman's race until the car started drifting to the center, Gary.
Yeah, he got out a little ways, and the car started to move over towards the center line, and Giuliani, he went straight as an arrow.
On race day, it has to kill you when your car's moving, and you know you got to take your foot off the gas.
It sure is, and boy, and I tell you, in those funny cars, when they get a little bit out of the groove, boy, you've got to be cranking that steering wheel.
I've heard a lot of people tell me that dragsters, you kind of point and shoot. Funny cars, you really got to manhandle. Wow, look at that move that car made. Bateman really did something just to keep in his own lane there.
Yeah. Yeah, like you were saying, the dragsters are more of a finesse kind of car. Funny car, you really have to manhandle it to get it down. And the alcohol funny cars are probably the toughest cars to drive in all of drag racing.
Well, that right there is our first round 2 winner, and standing by with him is Jason.
Well, Mike Giuliani is getting his helmet taken off. 6:01, not exactly stunning numbers, but I think you'll be happy with that. You got the round win. He got a little close to the line. You're going to the next round.
Fantastic. You've got to love drag racing. This is your best. Absolutely.
He's moving on.
Wow, out of breath after just 6 seconds of work. Here we go with Bucky Austin and John Evanchuk. Bucky Austin, the Northwest hitter, if you're not familiar with it, he is Pat Austin's uncle. Has been racing in this category, seems like forever. Big-time player up in this part of the country. John Evanchuk, you got a feel for the guy. Qualified 16th, just happy to make the show. Stops Pat Austin in round number 1. Comes back in round number 2, and, geez, you got to face another Austin. Earlier, Jason stopped by John's pit area.
As Alan told you earlier in the show, Pat Austin lost in round number 1 when he lost to Blower Belt. Well, the guy that benefited from that is John Evanchuk, driver of the Red Wolf Federal-Mogul Funny Car out of Canada. And he's at his first ever national event, and to win your first ever national event round against the 4-time champ, you guys are off to a good start.
Yeah, we're pretty happy with that, of course. You know, Pat's a very good racer, and they've been doing this for a long time, so we feel like we're pretty lucky to get by such good racers.
Now, it's a real interesting story how you guys got involved, and Ruth, your wife, she's the one that's responsible for you being here.
Yeah.
I sat back about 5 years ago one day and decided that we wanted to do our own program. We were crew on a 750 alcohol car, and Jet Field, the previous owner to this car, came into Calgary with the Canadian Open, and I spotted the car and I fell in love with it, and I had to have it. And I hounded him and chased him all the way to Pocatello, and we picked it up and brought it back to Canada, and here she is.
Well, John and Ruth are getting ready to take on Bucky Austin in round number 2, and on paper, Bucky has the advantage, but as you know, and it's proved in round 1, these things aren't run on paper.
That's right, Jason. We don't run these things on paper. Wow, 16 qualifier takes out number 1, and for your trouble, you get to run Bucky Austin. How's that for a tough day?
Well, that's a really tough day. You think you take take one Austin out first round, you're done, but now you got Bucky to deal with.
Yeah, I think after you beat Pat, you ought to just automatically get a solo run. I mean, you've earned it if you beat Pat Austin.
Boy, that's for sure. Pat Austin's been running really strong this year.
Just for the record, I had a chance to talk to Pat after that first round. The timing wheel, which sits on the crankshaft that they use the timing light with, came apart, knocked the blower belt off the car, and that's what stopped it a weekend early for the Pro Max team. Both drivers moving around a little bit, but I have a feeling that Bucky Austin will take a 579 and only 226 miles an hour. Obviously did not have his foot on the gas at the finish line. 579 and 226, those numbers just don't go together. Gary, let's see if we can figure out what happened here.
Yeah, the car made a good move out of the gate, and for some reason it underpowered the finish line.
See Everchuk really dancing around in that lane closest to the camera. Bucky's car was a little straighter, but not a lot. We'll get another shot of that from camera 6 down at the end. And watch how much these guys are moving around. Whoa, almost like a magnet kind of drawn together in the middle out there. But Uncle Bucky is headed to the semis, and we'll be back with more Federal Mogul Funny Car action, Seattle International Raceway, right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. 2 pairs left in this second round of Federal Mogul Funny Car action. That is John Hyland as he gets set to take on Russ Parker. John Hyland, part of a trivia question. He is part of a family that the father, the daughter, and the son have all won NHRA national events. Let's go down to the end of the racetrack. Here's Jason.
Well, Bucky Austin, a 579, but you had to work for that. The thing was moving around all over the place.
Yeah, I was struggling down there, and I kind of feathered a little bit there, about 3/4 track, and then I had a problem right into the lights, so I shut it off early. There's some pretty big bumps right before the lights, and these funny cars get, like Pat did first qualifying run, almost crashed it. So I shut it off early. The car ran good, and hopefully we'll be back up there again.
Well, that explains the speed being down a little bit at the end. By the way, just for your trivia buffs, as far as I know, the only other family in drag racing can say that is the Anderson. Brad Anderson, Randy Anderson, and Shelly Anderson have all won NHRA national events. Russ Parker on the far side, sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of Oregon. That's the Got Milk machine at Centennial Batteries. Russ, who actually sat in your seat the first show he did this year from Pomona.
Yeah, and he did a really good job.
That he did. I'm sure, though, if we ask, just like if we ask you, where would you rather be today?
I'd rather be on the track.
I figured. Couple of Oregon runners. There are actually 4 or 5 very strong Federal Mogul Funny cars that hails from the state of Oregon. Here's 2 of them going out in round 2. Wow, Russ Parker tattooed John Hyland on the starting line. He was holding 6 Hun going past the Christmas tree. And the gang from the Dairy Farmers and Centennial Batteries heads for the semis, 583 to a 586. But it's not going to look that close once you figure in the reaction time.
Yeah, Russ Parker definitely got the advantage on the starting line, and John Hyland got to see the back of his car all the way down the track.
Now watch, only 0.03 of a second difference in elapsed time, but when you factor in the 0.06 in reaction time, it's better than a car length at that speed. That's about the straightest run that we've seen any Federal Mogul Funny cars make.
Yeah, neither one of them seemed to move around that much.
So Russ Parker heads to the semis, and for his trouble, he'll get Bucky in the next round. We've got 1 pair of Federal Mogul Funny cars left to wrap up this round number 2. That is Dan McGlone, the Pure Insanity Camaro. He gets set to take on Steve Gasparelli. His father, a legend in Federal Mogul Funny cars out on the West Coast.
Yeah, and they're super people, and Steve's been doing a really good job driving this car, and Dan McGlone's got his work cut out for him.
Before we watch this race, we'll check in with the winner of the last one. He's with Jason.
Well, milk, it does a body good and obviously helps with those reaction times, too. Your 83 beats John's 86.
Well, that's great. Hey, we take the ET, too, and, you know, that we didn't get lane choice against Bucky, and, you know, that's what we got next round, I do believe, but it was tough racing John. I mean, we're good friends. My crew chief used to be his crew chief, and we've remained great friends, so tough to race them Oregon guys early, but I'd rather come out on top.
That's one thing about the Federal Mogul Tour. It really is a family affair. Everybody's friendly. If you need help, the guys who are going to race next round will come over and lend a hand.
Yeah, it really is. Everybody's really close, and if you run out of parts, everybody's always over there willing to help and loan you parts. And if need help working on it in between rounds, they're over there trying to help you.
It truly is a family affair. And as a matter of fact, this team is a pretty good family affair. As I mentioned, Lou Gasparelli, been racing since the inception of the class years ago. Finally decided, you know, it's time just to kind of step back, give the kid a chance. He put his son Steve in the car. And Steve has done quite a job with it. Steve actually tore an Achilles tendon earlier in the season, or during the off-season. Couldn't run the first couple of races while he recouped. His dad got back in the car and almost won the Phoenix race. And I got to believe if Lou had won that race, he'd have said, you know something, kid, I think maybe I'll drive for a while.
Yeah, that would have been kind of a shame if that would have happened. I'm sure Lou would have loved to win it.
Gasparelli, far side, Dan McClone in the near lane. Another one of the Oregon runs, closer to the field. Great drag race. 584 for Gasparelli wins it. 584 at 244. To Dan McClone's losing 592 at 241. But just as we saw in the last one, reaction time played a factor in this one. McClone was off the starting line first, and that made this look a lot closer than it was, Gary.
Yeah, you can't give up that much reaction time if you want to win rounds. And Steve Gasparelli's really lucky to be able to go in the next round.
About 700ths difference on the reaction timer. Gasparelli was 800ths quicker on the racetrack. And what's a 100th of a second look like at 240 miles an hour? About like that. About a fender length. Steve Gasparelli is heading on. Another pretty good old drag race. Both cars going fairly straight. In the semis, Bucky will take on Russ Parker, Steve Gasparelli, and Mike Giuliani, and we'll be back with that right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. Semifinals time in the Federal-Mogul dragster ranks, and that is Steve Federland. The lady just on the right side of the screen, his wife, Patty. They are kind of the quintessential sportsman racers. Gary Ormsby, like you, started out in Super Comp, worked their way up through the classes, and now in a Federal-Mogul dragster.
Well, it definitely helps when you start in the lower classes and move up to one of these high-powered cars, because it just gives you a chance to get out on the track and race against guys. And when you do step into one of these 250-mile-an-hour, 206-mile-an-hour Federal-Mogul cars, it makes it a lot easier to drive.
He's got the solo run by virtue of the fact that only 12 cars showed up for the race. 561, 249. He kept it consistent. He's going into the final round, but whether he faces off with Rick Santos or Mark Henches, I'm not sure 561 is going to be enough. If you've got a solo run like that, Gary, do you use it to experiment?
Well, I went over there and talked to him, and they just basically wanted to try to be consistent with that car. And like Patty told me, that they're taking baby steps with this thing. They can't try to run 560 and try to go out the next run and run a 540.
Here's the other half of the semifinals. You're looking into the eyes of Mark Henches. He's strapped inside that Airtime Aviation car. Out of Federal Way, Washington, he's getting set to take on the Champ, just the latest in a long line of guys who've tried to stop that Rick Santos guy. Let's check into the pits. Earlier, Jason stopped 5.
There's a new club in the Federal-Mogul dragster category, and only 2 guys have these belt buckles that say they have beat Rick Santos this season. Mark Henches is one of those. He took him out in the final round at a Division 6 event in Boise, Idaho. You know what it takes to beat him. Can you do it today?
We're going to try. We're going to try to run mid-40. Hopefully Rick will have a little problem, a little hiccup or something. We'll be able to drive around him and have an equal or better light than he does and go for the win. And I don't know if I get 2 belt buckles then or what. I'm not sure. So
Santos has lane choice going into this semifinal matchup.
Thanks, Jason. Mark Henches trying to do what nobody's been able to do for, well, it seems like since the Reagan administration, and that's stop Rick Santos. The Oakwood Homes car has been spectacular. They won the Federal-Mogul Drag Racing Series event a week ago down at Sears Point, and if I've done the math right, that gives them a perfect 10 for the World Championship points, Jason.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be beat for the World Championship, but this is going to be a good race. You got a couple of 540 cars here, and, you know, if they make any kind of mistake, shake the tires or whatever, Mark Henches could be going into the next round.
One of the things about that Santos team, though, is they so very rarely make mistakes. Norm Grimes is such a detail-oriented guy. He serves as crew chief on this machine, and they just very rarely beat themselves. If you want to take out that blue and white car, you're going to have to go down and lay out a good run.
Yeah, and I talked to them before this run, and they said they're basically just going to wipe the car down and bring her back up for the next run.
That car has been amazing for the last few years. Mark Henches, he'll be in the near lane. Rick Santos, far side of the racetrack. Of course, if you go with my theory, Pat Austin would still be racing. Larry Minor would still be racing. There have been some major league upsets here this week.
Yeah, and this could be another one right here.
Let's find out. Steve Federland waits in the final. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Oakwood Homes team, boy, they made a major mistake. They slowed all the way down to a 546 at 256 miles an hour. That team is just incredible.
Yeah, they're going to have to polish that thing, I think, for the next run to get it go a little bit faster. I don't think they're going to need to, though.
Rick Santos heads to yet another final round, and Hinch is a game effort. I mean, credit where credit's due. 556, 253. Not a bad lap in one of these cars, but the last couple of years, those guys have just been head and shoulders above the rest. Of course, the big rumor is that the Oakwood team is going top fuel racing next year, and I'm telling you, I can hear everybody in the Federal-Mogul pits rejoicing.
Yeah, there might be a chance for somebody else to take one of these wins.
We'll be back with Federal-Mogul Funny Car semifinals right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. Alan Reinhart, Gary Ormsby Jr. in the booth. Jason Baffery taking care of things out in the field. The Prolong, Super Lubricants, Northwest Nationals, Federal-Mogul coverage. Funny Car semifinal time. That's Mike Giuliani, the runner out of Canada, making the trek down in that Lone Shark Achieva as he gets set to take on Steve Gasparelli, the second-generation racer out of California. Earlier, Jason stopped by the pits to check in on the Gasparelli clan.
The last time we saw Steve Gasparelli, he was #1 qualifier in Madison, Illinois, but unfortunately he was upset in round #1. Well, here in Seattle, he's qualified well. He's been running great. Just ran a 584 in that second round match. You've got your dad, your uncle, all working on the car, and things are going well.
Going good. We're all working hard, and the car's running better every run, so we're pleased. Hopefully we can win one.
His father, Lou, has 3 national event trophies on his mantle from his driving career. Steve's still looking for his first, and he's hoping to pick it up here in Seattle.
You know, Jason, I got to believe he's got a pretty good shot at picking up his first national event win here in Seattle. Of our 4 semifinalists, Gary, only one has national event hardware on his mantle.
Yeah, and this is definitely a car that can step up and win a race.
Bucky Austin, the only one who's ever visited Victory Lane on the national event trail of the 4 cars that are left. That's Gasparelli in the far side, Mike Giuliani in the near lane. And these are the number 10 and 14 qualifiers. Gasparelli with 10, Giuliani 14. This has not been a day to be a high qualified car in Federal-Mogul racing. They're ready. And Gasparelli is going to the final round. 597, 230 miles an hour and change to a 625 for Giuliani. Gasparelli brilliant off the starting line. He had 500s in the bank by the time they went past the Christmas tree, but that car was drifting around over towards the wall. He's got to be a little nervous in there, wouldn't you think, Gary?
Yeah, that car made a strong move over towards the left-hand guardrail, and Steve told me the last run that thing spun the tires pretty hard. Looks like it spun the tires a little bit there again and got out of the groove, and he pulled it back in.
He did get the win light. That 97, if I'm a betting man, is not going to be good for lane choice in the final. Watch it again from the cameras all the way down at the end of the racetrack. Wow, you can see the car making a hard move towards the wall, and you can see where it got into the bumps over there in that left lane that a lot of the competitors have been talking about. But the good news is Steve Gasparelli going to his first career final round. His dad, of course, has been to a bunch of them. This is just old hat to Lou Gasparelli, but I bet Steve's pretty pumped up. Down at the end of the racetrack, here's Jason.
Steve Gasparelli getting ready for his first final round appearance. As Alan just mentioned, Lou has been to several finals in his career, and you're going to have to get a little advice from your dad now about what to do here in the final round, maybe win this thing.
I've been around. I know what to do, I think, but I'm sure the old guy will have something to tell me.
The car slowed down a little bit. Alan mentioned it probably won't be good enough for lane choice with that 597.
How big a factor is lane choice, Gary, on this day on this racetrack?
Well, I tell you, I talked to Steve that run before, and they felt that the left lane was actually better for the funny cars, even though they were spinning the tires really hard. So I would say that it's probably a big factor here in the final round.
Bucky Austin in this pair has lane choice coming in, and he also chose the left side of the racetrack as he gets set to take on Russ Parker out of the Dairy Farmers of Oregon at Centennial Batteries. Russ looking for his first national event win. Bucky, as we mentioned, has won a bunch of these things. He's got 14 trophies, and of course his nephew Pat, the winningest driver ever in the history of this class. That's a pretty good old race car. When you come to Seattle, you're in Bucky's backyard.
Yeah, this is definitely Bucky's backyard, but Russ told me he wants to take him out here in the semifinals.
Russ is the last man standing of the Oregon gang of funny cars that came up here to run this weekend, and we'll see if he's got anything for Bucky Austin. Bucky also qualified in the slow half of the field. He came out of the number 9 spot. Parker was better. He's the only top half car still alive here in the semis. He started the day in the number 4 qualifying position. With a wire-to-wire job. He goes 579, 244 for the win. Both drivers good on the starting line. Only a couple of thousand separated them there. Russ Parker slows to a 590 at 242, and Bucky's going to yet another final. Pretty good old drag race.
That was a really good drag race. Both cars seemed to go down the lane pretty much straight without any problems. Bucky got there first.
Bucky has been running 70s since he unloaded that car. Well, he has today anyway. Struggled a bit in qualifying, but if you watch it again from down at the end of the racetrack, wow, that's as straight as you'll ever see one of these cars go. 579, that's got Bucky in the final, where he will face off with Steve Gasparelli. Bucky will have lane choice in that final round, and we'll be back with finals from Seattle right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. There's lots of other Federal-Mogul activity that's a part of every NHRA national event. Earlier, Jason checked in on a guy who runs Super Comp with a unique automobile.
In 1953, if you wanted a brand new car, all you had to do was flip through the pages of a Sears catalog, and you could order yourself a brand new Henry J for just about $1,200. Well, they turned into pretty nice race cars throughout the 50s and 60s, and here in the year 2000, they make even better looking race cars. This one is owned by Bob Cocatello. You can see chop top, fiberglass parts. It is nicely done. And you're running this car in Super Comp and taking a very unique approach.
Well, I've owned the car 35 years, and with Brad Hadman and Rear Morrison helped me out to make it the 2000 piece, and we run without throttle stops, and we detune the car, and we can do that with Rear Morrison power, and we have more power than an 890 run, but today we're running 890.
Now, he mentioned he doesn't run with a throttle stop. Very different in the Super Comp category. He's going to have to be consistent to compete with this very tough class.
Jason, Super Comp is tough. Unfortunately for Bob, he got knocked out here in the first round. This is the final round. Super Gas, Jim Glenn, far side. In the Firebird, Paul Nero for AT&T Cable Services in that 93 5.0 style Mustang. Heads-up race. They're trying to run 1090. This is an entry-level class in NHRA Federal-Mogul competition. Good, close racing at the sportsman level, and Paul Nero wins his first one. 1091, 126 miles an hour to a losing 1093. Pretty good old drag race. Congratulations to Paul. The Mustang heads for the winner's circle. That'll bring up our stock eliminator final round. That's Gary Waldo. 1968 Nova, 396 under the hood as he gets set to take on Toby Lang, a 396 powered 69 Chevelle. Now this is handicap style racing. Toby Lang will get the green first, and then Waldo in the Nova tries to run him down. Gary went to the final at this race a couple of years ago and got beat by his brother. Toby Lang also has a brother, Jody, who races in stock eliminator on the Federal-Mogul Drag Racing Tour. They're ready. Both green light starts on the starting line. Gary looks like he has already made up the advantage that Toby got through the head start. Let's see if he can hold him off as they close in on the stripe. Gary Waldo wins his first one. He ran 1078 on his 1075 dial, and he is the third member. That was his brother Eric, who beat him here a couple of years ago. Gary, the third member of the Waldo family to win with a big block muscle car. He drives this. His brother and his father each have 428 4-speed Mustangs. Congratulations to Gary Waldo from that Racing Waldo family. From stock, we go to super stock. You're looking into the cockpit of John Sheese's automobile. One of the California car cover specials from Jim DeFrank and Sons Racing. That's a pretty good old team they've got there. Jimmy DeFrank, the reigning Federal-Mogul World Champion. Tony DeFrank, top 10 finisher in last year's championship chase. And John Sheese, multi-time national event winner in his own right. They're taking on Pete Koss, the guy known as the Hitman, right here in Seattle. Pete, who raced in Stock Eliminator for many years, has now stepped up to run into Super Stock Wars, making his first final round appearance in Super Stock. Handicap racing again. The far lane will get the green light first, and then John Sheese is going to have to try to track down the Hitman. Once again, good green light start. Nice wheels up launch by Sheese in the near lane. He's running out of real estate. Koss still out in front. Here comes John Sheese. Got him. 977 to a 1020. Both drivers breaking out. They ran quicker than their dial, and the DeFrank family goes wild. As a matter of fact, when you've got the Federal-Mogul World Champ cheering you on in the final round, you're having a pretty good day. John Sheese wins one for the DeFrank team. Super Gas final rolls in next. Pretty good matchup right here. The blue Camaro, Mike Henderson, former Federal-Mogul World Champ in the Super Gas category. On the other side of the racetrack, Mike Blodgett out of Long Beach, California, the Coast Plating, kicking Chicken Vega. Blodgett, one of the big-time players in the Southern California Super Gas Association. Both these guys have got national event hardware on their mantles, two of the best in the business facing off in the final here at the Prolong Super Lubricants Northwest Nationals. Heads up start, 990, the magic number in Super Gas. Henderson and Blodgett going at it. Blodgett a little better on the reaction timer. Now Henderson's got a big mile-an-hour car. He'll drop back and then close the gap at the top end. Mike Henderson not going to get him. 9.901 for Blodgett on the 990. That is one thou away from perfect on the track. He was 424 on the tree. And race speak, that's a 25,000 package. And you've got to have a good package if you're going to send Henderson packing. Mike Blodgett wins another one on the NHRA Federal-Mogul Trail. Well, that wasn't a pretty picture. That's the picture on the front of that car, the one driven by Troy Moyle. This is the Super Comp final. The class dominated by big block Chevy rear engine dragsters, but as Jason showed us just a little bit ago, any type of car can run in this class if you can run the 890 standard. Troy Moyle having a pretty good old weekend, the Easy Auto Sales car, as he goes up against Jim Hughes. Jim looking for his first ever national event win. He is the guy at Hughes Converters and Hughes Performance out of Phoenix, Arizona. Been to some final rounds, won a Division 7 championship, finished in the top 10 last year in the Federal-Mogul Championship chase, has never won a national event. Jim Hughes is hungry, and he'd love to take the trophy home from Seattle, of course. So would Troy Moyle. Heads up start, 890 the category. Super Comp. Both drivers pulling in. You can see Jim Hughes inching up. Now they're both into the pre-stage. Moyle stages. Hughes. Jim Hughes was better on the Christmas tree, but will it be enough to hold off that high mile-an-hour car at Troy Moyle top end? Wins it on the starting line, 896 to a quicker 893. Hughes was 413 on the tree to Troy Moyle's 451. The true win, margin of victory, just 2 thousandths of a second, and it'll be a hot time at Hughes Performance tonight. Jim Hughes finally picks up his first national event win after being close so many times. That leaves us with competition eliminator, and that is David Rampy. Winnebago and Itasca Motorhome, the Harold Stout Racing Team, as he gets set to take on Alan Freese, one of the big hitters out of California. If you are a normal follower of our Federal-Mogul shows here on ESPN2, you know the name David Rampy. He is a two-class racer, races for a living. He is sitting in his office here on Sunday afternoon in Seattle and trying to stop Alan Freese. Alan, who also has tasted victory lane on the national event level. Comp Eliminator is a handicap-style category, but there is no breakout. First car to the finish line wins. Rambo with that small block powered Phantom Alter, 304 cubic inch Dodge out of Patterson Performance. Kelly Rampy, the name on the passenger side of the car, of course. David's wife. Alan Freeze with a small block Chevrolet as well in the Grand Prix bodied machine. Freeze will get the head start. Rambo will have to come from behind. Clean and green on the starting line. David Rampy making up ground. Rampy's caught him early. Freeze has problems, and Rampy's coasting into the winner's circle. Winnebago guys go wide. 7:57 the elapsed time at 150 to a losing 8:29. Alan Freeze had trouble, but he wasn't going to catch Rambo. We'll be back. There's 2 finals left, Federal-Mogul Dragster and Funny Car. We'll cover that right after this. Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway. Federal-Mogul Funny Car. Time for the final. Steve Gasparelli in the red car. His first final round appearance is taking over the driving chores from his father Lou. And Bucky Austin, the Northwest hitter for Exxon Superflow and Bucky's Radiator, Brakes, Muffler Shop. I got to believe, Gary Ormsby, that Bucky is the favorite here going into the final. He's had the stronger car all day. He did have lane choice, but we've seen it so often. Anything can happen.
Well, that's true. And one thing about having lane choice, Steve Gasparelli's run that left-hand lane for all day, and they would prefer to be in that left-hand lane.
Of course, quicker ET from the earlier round gets lane choice. Bucky was the quicker of the two in the semifinal, so he gets to choose. He wanted to stay in the left. He puts Gasparelli over on the right-hand side of the racetrack. If you're Steve Gasparelli, how nervous are you? First time, final round, big crowd, a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there is a lot of pressure, especially having to race in Austin here in the final round and being the first final round. I'm sure he's plenty nervous, but he's been around this sport for a long, long time, and I'm sure he'll do real well here.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a good place to have to race in Austin, but I got to believe Seattle's probably worse than most, because Bucky lives just down the street from here in Fife, Washington. Gasparelli, the California runner, they are ready to do battle. Bucky Austin, in his 2 earlier laps today, has run 79 on both of them. If he runs another 79, I believe he wins this thing. It's really his race to lose. If Bucky doesn't make a mistake, I think he's got Gasparelli covered.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that one.
Of course, Pat Austin also had John Everchuk covered in the first round, and we all know how that worked out. Gasparelli gave it a game effort, but comes up a little short. Bucky Austin at 581 and 243 miles an hour wins another one. Here in a hometown, Steve Gasparelli at 592 at 243. Gasparelli on time on the Christmas tree. He was pumped up. He was ready. He just didn't quite have enough race car today.
Yeah, Gasparelli did everything he could. He was, like you said, did his job on the tree, and the car went pretty straight down the track. He got a little over towards the center line, a little bit out of the groove, but he'll come back another day.
You can see Bucky's car bouncing there through the middle, those bumps that we've talked about throughout the day here at SIR, and at the finish line stripe, just about a car length, Bucky Austin wins again. Wow, didn't look that fast the first time we saw him. Let's go down to the far end of the racetrack. Jason is with Bucky.
Getting his helmet off after his nephew Pat went out in round number 1. It was up to him to take home the pride of the Seattle-Tacoma area. 581, your first national win of the season and your 10th of the career.
Yeah, you know, when Pat went out, we were going to have a hell of a second round there, and I found my problem, and I actually been kind of detuning the car all day. I think he made a very good run. I don't know what he ran on that run. He was beside me all the way. Unfortunate, you know, for 3 years I, you know, had a good run, and I was down a little bit, but now I'm back. I won last weekend, Canada, and I won again.
A couple of years ago, he went on a string and was the terror of Federal-Mogul Funny Car. We'll be back right after this with the Dragster Finals.
Welcome back to Seattle International Raceway for the final time. Alan Reinhart, Gary Ormsby Jr. in the booth, Jason Baffery out in the field, and this is the Federal-Mogul Dragster final round, and that is the guy that everybody wants to go top fuel racing, Rick Santos, on the other side of the track. He has been dominant. Steve Federlin, the Impatience team, appearing in his first final round. We've got kind of a David and Goliath, almost like the Funny Car final. I got to believe Rick Santos has had the stronger car today. It's his race to lose. But if you're Steve Federlin, hey, you got nothing to lose. Why not throw something at it, see if the track will hold?
Well, that's true, and you know, Steve Federlin knows that he's run some 550s before with that car, and it's probably about the best that he's going to get out of that car. So he's got to hope that something goes wrong over there for Rick Santos, or he's he's going to have to cut one of the best lights of his career.
Santos qualified in the 540 range. In the first round, he ran 542. In the second round, 543. In the semifinals, 546. So I guess if you're an optimist, you can think, well, he's slowing down. That Oakwood team has been awesome, and they won't say it because, well, they're racers, and the old "it's not over till it's over." But I'll tell you that Rick Santos has locked up his 4th consecutive Federal-Mogul Dragster World Championship with a win on the Federal-Mogul Drag Racing Tour last week. That gives him a perfect 10-win season. 5 nationals, 5 divisionals. These guys have just been unstoppable. Federland hung in for a while, but just too much Rick Santos. Hey, he slowed down again. Maybe he is human. 549 at 254 miles an hour to Federland's 561. Steve Federland played the consistency game. He did what he knew he could do and hoped for a mistake. He just didn't get it.
Yeah, it's awful tough when you're racing Rick Santos. I mean, when you have 2/10, you're behind on 2/10 on the guy, you just don't have a chance.
And Santos, as he always is, straight and smooth and headed to the winner's circle for, I believe, the 30th time in his career. We'll have to double check that. He is the winningest driver in Federal-Mogul Dragster history. He tied past Blaine Johnson earlier this season for that honor. Like I say, they're going top fuel racing, and the rest of the class can't wait. Jason?
Well, Rick Santos, after his 29th career victory, he adds another one. This is all just gravy now. For all intents and purposes, he wrapped up the championship with the divisionals and nationals, but you're still having fun, still killing them.
Oh, yeah, we're having a great time. This Oakwood Homes team, they're doing such an outstanding job working on this car, giving me a great race car to race, and I can't say enough for them. You know, they do such an excellent job. And I want to say hi to my wife, Kelly. I love you. My boys, Kyle and Nick. I'm coming home. We got another one.
He probably travels with an extra trophy case just so he can get him home on the plane. Hey, be sure and join us next from Sears Point International Raceway in California, August 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. My thanks to Gary Ormsby for joining me in the booth. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com.